Howdy YouTubers, Jason here with Connecting Off the Grid, featuring today our tow system for everything from firewood to groceries, and as of this morning in testing out the tow hitch, even my wife at a faint 120 pounds. Want to focus on some of the unique features. We bought this trailer approximately 6 years ago. It was a kids trailer we modified by putting a flatbed on. You can see here we simply strung it into place, drilling holes every 1 inch, reinforced the back with some high quality duct tape such that when we rest it on its side or on the back end, it doesn't cut those cords, because you don't need much to hold the top on. It's just got to hold it in place, and then that's sufficient for loading whatever we need to. Plenty of tie down places. I suspect at this point, with the modifications that we've made to include strengthening the bottom here, that we're carrying as much as 250 pounds of firewood. I've also improved the protection on the tow arm here, and recently, which is the main focus of this video, totally redesigned and rebuilt the hitch mechanism. So there's a good look at it there first, and I'll go into some details. But before I do that, I want to show you what I had before. It was pretty heavily modified. Folks that have these kids' bicycle trailers will recognize this piece of equipment. They typically have a little rubber or plastic spacer that comes out. I think you can buy a new one of these for about $20 online. It's a relatively simple, lightweight, efficient, because it can go onto a lot of bike frames, clamp type system. You'll see it clamps onto the frame, connects by way of spring to this 1 inch tubular arm. The inner shock absorber on ours broke some years ago, so I rigged up a support system here by way of wire cable and pipe clamps to the arm. Managed the radius of the spring using a Husqvarna XP model chainsaw roller bearing that I had lying around. And then also another aluminum spacer inside there. And this system has worked brilliantly for about 5 years, I think. But given the weights that we were dealing with and the speeds we were dealing with in hauling firewood, which is a new practice for us, gets us out on our bikes into the national forest. This little beauty made by Steel, battery-powered chainsaw, makes it possible. So we take this sucker, strap it onto the rack. The battery provides us plenty of power to fill up the trailer, and if I get out today with my wife, and maybe I'll make video of that, to show first and quickly that it's not an insubstantial load that we carry. Of course, we use a permit, and we log tenths of a cord, because these permits are by the half cord. So, excuse me, tenths of a half of a cord. And my calculations using some quick math and tape measure suggests that we get about a tenth of a cord, tenth of a quarter of a cord per trailer load. So we simply write down the date. And just so you know that this is not an insubstantial amount that we're dealing with, this is the pile we've made so far. And that's taken, I suspect, 14 loads, I think. So 14 individual trips. And Put my hand on here, that's about waist high. I don't know exactly how tall it is, and then this is approaching about head high for me. So this is the store that we've started for this year, and that was all hauled by the trailer. And I suspect that it'll take us, we use about 3 cords estimated from last winter. It'll take us about 60 to 70 trips with our trailer on sections of the peak-to-peak highway. So I wanted to make sure that the hitch system in particular, because the bikes are bomb-proof already, we both have wonderful mountain bikes, but the hitch system in particular was up to the task. And so given the nearly thousands of images, videos, pictures I've seen online of various trailer setups for bicycles, I settled on this setup, which is borrowed pretty heavily from Bikes at Work, so acknowledgement to them and their system, but then also adapting to what we have here locally, what I could do personally, and what I thought would work the best. So at the heart of it is this integration of a rod end or ball joint. We had one of those at the local hardware store for $11. I found this hitch pin in the road, and then this fork was about $7 at the local hardware store, and some rubber bushings inside. Gives us full rotation so that the bike can be laid over on its side, and then of course full swing side to side. This then of course is needing to be mounted to the bike, so some challenges faced around there were, again, a clamp style system, or here I opted for something that would go on the quick release skewer, and I used a bit of L bracket that I had lying around with holes in it. You can see those holes here. And then I also had this tasty bit of hardware just lying around. Found it from somewhere. This is for those of you that are in electrical work, for mounting EMT, and I think that's a 3/4 inch bracket that I bent all the way around, put a couple of washers. Certainly anyone who tried to mimic this design would find it impossible, because these are a lot of parts that I had lying around. But that's the point, what can we achieve with those parts lying around? So then further along parts that I bought, all told, this is about if I had to estimate, no, I won't estimate, about $35 in hardware that I purchased. So if you compare that to the price of a new 200-pound, 300-pound capacity trailer, you're approaching $1,000, and we've got about 100 in the one that we're using here. So additional parts that I purchased: this galvanized steel end cap that I drilled a hole in for this to house a bolt that's inside here. I won't take it off, but if you can imagine, drill the hole, there's a bolt and washer and lock washer in here that go right into this fork. This is also about 4 inches of probably gas tubing, 1 inch inner diameter, which slid beautifully over the top of this. There's a hole in this arm, just like this one on the side here, up here, that I threaded a 1/4 inch bolt with a nylon lock nut on the bottom. You can see there. Onto the end, continuing back up, there's a bushing in here to take up some of the spacing, rubber bushing in here to take up some of the spacing in the angle iron. The holes already in the iron were sufficient for threading the skewer through. This collar certainly is unnecessary, and I may downgrade to something shorter. I was trying another design iteration at one point and opted not to do that, but already had this zinc spacer, so kept it with a washer bolt that goes through, allows this to pivot all the way around this way. And then again, finally topping off here, bit of electrical tape underneath for abrasion. Even though this is a titanium frame and will pretty much eat whatever makes contact with it, I didn't want to scratch it unnecessarily. And then, of course, a keeper strap. Simply some cordage I had lying around, tied a double fisherman's knot in, and that clips with this clip that I also had in a bin up here. So the basic principles: articulation at the joint, loading as close to the center of gravity and center of pull as possible, which is the rear axle. A keeper, in the event that these components fail, it's possible for this to spin loose, so I'll need to keep an eye on. And I may lock some of these threads in time as I feel more comfortable with the design configuration. But then also some kind of bracing mechanism if you're going to go the route of a quick release mount. Certainly need something to support it to keep it from slipping. And again, in towing my wife around as an initial test, it seemed to work brilliantly. So we may try it more into the woods today. But that's the basic setup. As you can see, we've already hauled a substantial amount of firewood. We certainly get looks from people on the road, you know, hang loose, cheers, and odd stares. But it's certainly an effective system that doesn't require us to use any gas. The maintenance on this vehicle is minimal versus our Dodge, which can carry half to a full cord per load. So 10 to 20 times what we can get on this little trailer. But we lose out on the exercise, we lose out on the quiet ride into the national forest. And then of course just the cool factor in the independence of bicycles in being able to do typical household chores. I've also done some experimenting with hauling water. We have a spring near our house, and I was using this trailer on my cross bike hauling water, and there were some serious stability issues such that I took a major fall. Scratched up the bike, scratched up myself, still healing some of the scabs, and got a couple of scars already. And learned that these one-wheel trailers for heavy loads, they're not designed for it, but as is typical of me, I like to push those limits and those boundaries and see what's possible. And what I tried certainly was not possible. And spilled the water out in the road, spilled myself out in the road, scratched up one of our water jugs. So that also compelled a rather focused look at, okay, what's a more stable platform that can handle the weight of, you know, as much as 14 gallons, which approaches, let me do some quick math, 7 times 8, about 112 pounds. That certainly was not suitable on this trailer. Tow behind Bob with the skewers. I think it's rated to 70 pounds, so my apologies to folks at the Bob Trailer Company. There's nothing wrong with the trailer you made. It was my own buffoonery. I got into an oscillation that I couldn't correct, and especially with sloshing water, and spilled out. So I think this is the rig that I'll probably use next time, because I'm certainly back on the horse and still at it to go get water. And I'm really excited about this hitch setup. Much more bomb-proof than the last one. I think much more reliable, and will certainly put my mind at ease when I'm hauling 200 pounds of lumber behind me down the highway at 20 miles an hour and above in some cases. I don't have a speedometer, but I blend in with traffic in many cases pretty seamlessly, and I suspect they're doing 25, possibly even 30. So a trailer that is up to that task was our goal. We may still buy a Bikes at Work heavy load dual wheel. We've also looked at the Surly Bill and Ted. We've looked at a number of considerations around building our own, and for right now, the effort of several hours of design effort in looking at other hitch systems. For now, this is the least expensive in terms of dollars spent, and the strongest hitch system that I would venture to say one of the stronger hitch systems on the market. And it's not on the market. So if you're interested in more details, certainly hit me up in the comments section or send me an email. I think there's a link to that on our Connecting Off the Grid website. And of course, the point of this: how can we live in a society where we aren't connected by the grid of electricity or fossil fuels? How can we continue to go about the daily activities that are so important? And here are some ways. Electric chainsaw can be powered off of a solar panel. Cart for carrying firewood, even small game. I venture to guess that you could probably put quarter to half of a deer on here to haul it out of the woods. Certainly without snow on the ground, but as I've shared in another blog, tire chains are always a possibility. But meeting the basic tasks, completing the basic tasks, and what equipment will we need for that? If there were no fuel available, a 98% mechanically efficient bicycle, and specifically the mountain bike for all terrain, is without a doubt one of the best decisions and investments a person can make in their health, their personal security, and also in terms of a lifestyle that speaks of efficiency and commitment to survivability. I wrote in the blog that just another angle here, that the bicycles in our flood experience, a 1,000-year rain event, which I suspect that humanity can begin to expect more and more of, that the bicycles were the top performers, hands down. When you look at what can go wrong mechanically on these systems, it's not much. Certainly you don't get a lot of protection from the elements, but as I happen to have my rain layer here to show, not intentionally, I was simply moving some stuff around, it just happens to be on the trailer, carrying a small bundle that includes wet weather pants and a wet weather jacket. Extreme wet weather pants and wet weather jacket can make it such that those elements are tolerable. So thanks for watching. Happy trails, and please share your thoughts, opinions, and maybe some of your own designs.